Varietal wines in homebrew.
Featuring our 2-year-old Merlot.
Today on CSB Unpasteurized. Gotta pull out the big voice for those, you know? Yeah.
All right, so we're talking about varietal wines in homebrew. And some of you may be saying, what the heck is varietal wines? Well, that's, when you go to a restaurant or to a place where they sell wine and you say, I want a Merlot or a Chardonnay.
Or a Chianti.
Yeah, those are all varietal. We're going to talk about that today and why that's sort of difficult to do in homebrew.
But first, my glass is empty. So you know what we need?
The pour cam. So I got some notes here to try to help us stay on target. But as you know, with most of our unpasteurized, we just talk because that's what they're basically about, is us talking. And so we're sticking to the subject of varietal wines and how they're difficult to replicate in a homebrew scenario. And there's multiple points on why the difficulty is there. And I'm going to try to touch base on each one of them as we talk about our Merlot. So first off, a Merlot is made from Merlot grapes.
Yep. Yeah, I've been asked, can I make a Merlot with store-bought juice? No.
No.
Can I make a Merlot with store-bought grapes?
No.
No. Unless your store is selling Merlot grapes.
We're going to go into that a little bit further. I'm just trying to give some background to this specific.
This smells incredible.
Merlot is typically a medium-bodied wine with a deep red hue. As you can tell...
That's some deep red hue.
You can't get deeper than this red. This is fantastic.
I mean, that's pretty deep red.
Flop it so that it's just the white background, not the words. Oh. Yeah, see?
That's deep red.
It's super dark, which is fantastic. I love it. I love it.
I like Merlot as a cooking wine as well. Not everybody does that, but I like it in tomato sauce.
Yep. Yep, it's typically smooth, velvety, fruity finish with a soft tannic presence. It is considered an easy drinking wine, and it easily pairs with a multiple variety of different types of food. That's why it lends itself really well to cooking with it as well.
It's really interesting. As I'm sipping it, all those things that you just described, but I also get, this is going to sound weird, a very slight hint of Concord grape.
Oh, really?
Yep. Try it. Maybe I just associate that with grape.
I'm kind of getting it on the nose there. Typically, it's served slightly cooler than room temperature, between 60 degrees to 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Celsius will be here.
Making work for me now.
But if it is a rosé style of Merlot, then that's even served chilled, similar to white wines.
Interesting. Did not know that.
So let's see if our Merlot hits the target of what
I already tasted
a typical Merlot
I'm waiting
should
for you
taste
to catch
like.
up. Definitely get smooth, nice and velvety, good mouthfeel.
Yeah.
Good tannic presence without being overly tannic.
Right. And that was one of the things that they stressed on it, is that it's soft, but there's definitely a tannic presence.
Yeah.
Or some things are so soft that you can't tell that there's tannins there at all. This, I think, does a really great job of creating that balance.
I think the fruitiness definitely comes through. And I didn't get the Concord note that time.
Yeah, it's considered a dry wine because there aren't many sugars left, but because of the strong fruity note of the Merlot grape, it kind of...
This is 0.994.
Yeah, so we got it.
It's pretty dry.
We got it dry, but you still get that really great fruity note.
Oh yeah, it doesn't taste like a chalky dry thing. It actually tastes like there's some sweetness there. And we all know, or at least I hope you know, this is 10.2%. So at 10%, to be completely dry, devoid of sugar, it would have to be 0.790 final gravity. This is 15 points higher than that.
Yeah.
So there's still some sugars in there and other things that make the gravity go up. I know.
Yeah.
So it's not truly dry. And that's something that I've known the concept for a long time, but we're trying to actually explain it to people because we're starting to get some pushback by people saying it's finished at 1.000. Not necessarily. We've seen it happen.
We actually did another unpasteurized on that very
Yes,
topic.
we did, and it has not. Well, it would have come out by the time this comes out, but it hasn't come out at the time of recording.
It's future.
Yeah, it comes out in a few days.
See, we need the TARDIS. It would solve so many
We're
issues.
trying to be a little ahead of schedule.
I know. But for this, we need the TARDIS because I would have loved to have been able to pair and sample straight from finishing to the 1 year to the 2 year to see if
to have
there's
the
really,
three of them together.
Because memory is a fickle thing. It doesn't matter how clear you feel your memory is. Time is going to put stuff in there to get in the way and alter your perception.
Right. Now that I'm getting more time with it, there's a note in there that I'm not too pleased with. But it's not uncommon in dry red wines.
Yeah.
So it's a little phenolic. And I mean, I'm being picky, okay, to say this. I'm being picky. But we have to be, because that's what we're doing. You know, we're reviewing a wine as well as talking about what it is. So
for me, there's different receptors on your tongue.
Yeah.
And there's a part of the tasting experience where it makes my tongue feel flat. Not like something stale or something like that, where it's just like it either is taking over all the different receptors or just like it's almost like an overload where it's just like kind of static.
Okay.
On the
By
palate.
the way, interesting anecdote to that, and then I'll let you finish. Did you ever see the thing on the tongue where they show the different taste buds? Did you know that they're not actually in that one spot? They're actually distributed equally all around the tongue. That drawing is so dumb because they make people think like sweet is only in one spot on the tongue.
Sure.
It's not like that.
But lots of times, and it's probably different for different people. I don't know.
Different parts of the tongue to me activate differently with wine.
Right. And so sometimes I get a salty sensation in a particular area or a sweet sensation.
Oh, I just get like front and back of the tongue, more or less.
Right. Where this, like, initially I'm getting the variation of the experience, but then there's one section, I guess midway, where it just like, it's just kind of like flat. Like,
right.
Like
See, I'm attributing that to time, the changes, not actually placement on the tongue. But you're saying it goes flat, like receptor overload. If they're all triggered, then none of them are triggered, kind of thing. That I can appreciate that.
And then after that sensation goes away, I get kind of some acid pop and a little bit of the tannin dryness going on.
Yeah, this kept its acidity really nicely.
Yes. And I don't recall. I think this was before we weren't really taking care of pH readings.
I think we oaked it. I think we might have added tannin. I don't know. We should have checked, but we didn't check the original 1 year.
We didn't because we were just using this as an illustration for what we're going to talk about now.
Yeah.
So I touched briefly on the different aspects of a Merlot, and now I'm going to go deeper into how that is relatable.
She's going deep.
To all varietals of wine.
You want more, don't you?
I totally want more. We're going to totally finish this bottle and...
Careful, we have another tasting to do that's
we're going to finish
stronger.
that bottle too.
We will be sloshed. That one is the holiday fruitcake mead, and it's fortified. So I don't think we'll be finishing that bottle. I might finish it later, but we're not going to finish it on camera.
So if I say that creating or replicating a varietal wine in homebrew is nearly impossible, and then I'm saying, here we are drinking our Merlot, how is that not a contradiction? Right? I know you're asking yourself that.
I know the answer.
And so Ryan's going to explain.
It's because we actually bought Merlot concentrate to be able to do this. So this is actual grapes from Merlot. Now, some varietals can only be made in some regions.
Right.
Like Champagne.
And we're going to talk about that as well. There's laws.
And it varies from country to country, too.
It does. And then there's some places
some
like that grandfathered in. And
yeah, that's why you'll see some American companies that can actually make champagne and call it champagne because they were grandfathered before the law. And it's just really, really weird.
But we're jumping ahead of ourselves.
It's sparkling wine.
We're jumping ahead of ourselves.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're going to start with grapes.
Okay.
Grapes is where it all starts from, so let's start there. That seems like a logical place, right?
Okay.
So to make a Merlot, you have to use a Merlot grape.
Right.
That's the name of the grape. And
Now, can Merlot grapes be grown in multiple places?
Merlot grapes can be grown in multiple places. And I think
That makes it okay to call it a Merlot.
that is part of the reason why it was easier for us to get the Merlot concentrate, where some
because
concentrates...
it's probably California grapes that we got.
Right. Where some concentrates you can still get, but they're really expensive. And
Yeah, this one was reasonable, but still kind of pricey.
yeah. So to start off, to make the Merlot, you need the Merlot grapes. And this is the same for all varietals. They all have their specific grape that is associated with them.
Yeah, like Pinot and...
Like Muscat for Moscato.
Yep, we did that too, actually.
Yeah, because we actually found
We
Muscat
found
grapes.
Muscat grapes. And that one was cool because we did it from the grape itself, not from a concentrate. This one was kind of like using an extract in beer. It was kind of pre-done, pre-juiced. Didn't have all the tannins. That's why we added tannin to it.
I wonder if there's a group, like there's so many Facebook groups now that I'm finding really intriguing. I wonder if there's like a stocking Whole Foods Facebook group that says this particular product is available.
Maybe we should start one.
Yeah, because like
there's a new channel idea.
I want to go to Whole Foods once a week just to see what is available, because in the produce section it changes with the season.
Because we found cotton candy grapes there off season. We found Merlot or Muscat grapes.
Yeah,
there was a few other things that we found too.
The blood oranges are there sometimes.
Yeah, blood oranges are another one. We're actually looking for those right now.
Yes.
Because we want to do a blood orange mead, but we haven't seen blood oranges in a while.
So it's very hit and miss. So I would love to be able to be informed when they're there, so we can just go.
But there's a good tip, actually. This is what we started doing, and the only reason why we don't have some of these things now is because the hurricane made us lose power for too long, so they spoiled in our freezer. But what we do is if we see something like cotton candy grapes, we bought them. We had cotton candy grapes. We were going to do a cotton candy grape wine or mead.
We're the crazy people in the store doing math to figure out how much we need to buy.
We bought them. They were frozen. They were in our freezer, and we had to dump them because they spoiled.
Yeah.
But that's a good tip. Buy fruit when you see it rather than when you need it. Buy it ahead of time, clean it up, put it in bags, freeze it. That way, when you either collect enough or when you feel the time is right, you can now use it. Because I would suggest freezing the fruit before you use it anyway.
Yeah, and this was great for us because we grow a lot of our own fruit. And so we would harvest it incrementally and freeze it until we got enough, and then we could brew with it.
Yeah, we have a big stand-up freezer. I don't know how many cubic feet it is, but it was a lot, and it was dripped out all over our floor when we came home. Sorry,
regardless,
not trying to turn it into that. But
also, sometimes you can price shop, and the cotton candy grapes in particular can be really expensive, but if you find them on sale, even if you're not planning on brewing with them right away, you can go ahead and purchase them and freeze them, and that way when you're ready to brew them, you have them available to you and you save some money in the process.
The trick to buying fruit for, and this goes for any kind of fruit as well as grapes, is you want to buy the freshest you can get. Like on sale makes me a little bit nervous sometimes because sometimes they're not quite as good as you might want. Now, does that affect fermentation? Not necessarily, but if a fruit is already starting to go bad, the chance of mold happening it starts to go up. They're rotting already. So yeah, that's why you want to use the best fruit you can. I mean, think about it, garbage in, garbage out. You know, if you don't use a quality product, you're not going to get a quality product.
All right, so we're going to reel it back into wine and grape discussion.
These are all about.
I know. All that was important, and it was connected with fruit in general, but we're bringing it back to grapes. So the Merlot grape is typically grown in warm climates. So that gives it an availability to be grown rather than a specific region.
Define warm, though.
I didn't go that deep in my notes because I knew I wanted to take a lot of notes, and I had a limited amount of time. But warm climates. So I believe that's why
room temperature.
It can be grown in California. It can be grown in France. It can be grown in Italy. I am making guesses. I haven't researched it specifically. So please, Merlot, please do not throw hate at me because I'm just going off of the information that I received.
She didn't say they are grown there. She said they can be.
Climates.
I believe they can be. Spain, too, probably.
And so that is one of the reasons why it is kind of difficult to make a varietal wine in the homebrew, because if you don't have that specific varietal of grape, then you can't make that specific varietal of wine. Another reason that is part of the grape scenario is Terroir Noir. Is that the correct term?
Terroir. Yeah.
Yes. And
Not
so that
terroir, just terre noir.
okay. And what that means is of the soil, if I'm understanding it correctly.
More or
and
less.
so the soil types affect the flavor
No,
of
it's
the
not terre noir,
grapes.
it's terroir.
Yeah,
There's no
noir
N.
would be
You had me all confused. I'm
black.
like, black dirt? No,
Yeah, it's not
it's
black,
terroir.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
I apologize.
This is why we don't drink a whole bottle of wine while we're doing these.
I understand dirt. I don't understand the words. But for example, many of the grapes that we find in wines, particularly Italy varietals, the soil is enriched by volcanic
the volcanic ash.
ash. And so that makes a really terrific soil for growing grapes. But that soil type is vastly different from any other soil type that you can find elsewhere in the world. And that's really going to affect the flavor profile of the grape.
Yep.
Also, different climate changes that occur, whether it's a drought season, whether there's lots of rain, if there was
How their seasons change.
right,
actually has
that
a big
is going to
impact,
affect
too.
the flavor of the grapes as well. And that's part of the reason why different years are more
more valued or
sought
less
after.
valued. Yep.
than others because that crop of grapes that year was excellent compared to previous crops.
So see that even if you have the right grapes from a different season or a different year, they could make a different enough product that it's lesser or better.
Right. And part of that soil effect on the grapes is also going to be directly related to whether even if you can grow the grape in your region, if it's even considered that varietal wine type because it wasn't grown in that soil. So it's like, you have to have like little vampire grapes where they have their own soil.
Now, another thing to consider is a lot of commercial wineries either cultivate their own yeast or they use the yeast on the fruit. So if you're buying a concentrate or something like that, it's been heat treated.
Yeah,
those yeast are gone. So you're adding a different yeast than they used, which would also change the wine as well. So there's a lot of factors as to why it's really hard to replicate. Now, you can make something that's reminiscent of, or in the style of, or kind of close to.
Or our favorite word, adjacent.
Yeah. Like this is a Merlot. I've had lots of Merlots in my life. This is a Merlot. Is it exactly like any Merlot I've ever had? I don't think so. I think it's in the realm, and I think a wine drinker would recognize it as a Merlot, but I don't think it's reminiscent of any specific brand or winemaker's Merlot.
Sure. And even if you took the full spectrum of commercially made Merlots, they're going to be drastically different. You can get plum notes, you can get chocolate notes, you can get coffee notes.
Plum notes. That's what I was getting
within
from
the
this.
realm of Merlot.
Yeah.
So
I need more.
that's something to take into consider. So we talked about the grapes. We talked about the dirt. Now let's talk about the region. And this is something that Brian touched on a little bit earlier. And we're going to use Champagne as our example of region-specific wines. The Champagne region, is that what it's?
Champagne.
It's Champagne. It's not.
The Champagne region.
I'm sorry.
That was a little Captain What's-His-Face from,
Yeah.
from Futurama.
My-
Champagne.
Champagne. Yeah.
With your lingerie.
I'm not wearing any pants. Anyway, I am totally, but that was the guy.
She is.
Yeah. So Champagne is in
France.
France. Thank you. I didn't research Champagne. I just knew that that's the one wine that sticks in my head that has to be made in that region, except
They're very particular.
for the few
I forget which company
places.
it is. There is a maker in the
think
United
there's
States.
Two.
Oh, is there?
I think
Okay.
there's two in the United States that were making champagne before the rules came into play, and so they were
They made a
grandfathered
deal.
in.
They made a deal.
And said, okay, you can continue to say yours is
but
champagne.
nobody else can.
But we all know it really isn't.
I want to know how they enforce that rule across country lines, though. I mean, really? They wouldn't import it, but that doesn't mean that you can't. I don't know.
Right.
It's all very weird.
It is weird, but I understand why.
Yeah,
And
they're trying to keep their cultural heritage.
Right.
It's kind of like Parmigiano Reggiano. that is a very specific cheese from a very specific place that has to be treated in a very specific way in order to be called that.
And surprisingly
Balsamic
enough,
vinegar is another one.
a lot of the reasons that I've gone over with why varietal wines are their varietal goes along with cheese and chocolate
lots of foods.
and lots of things. It's because what were they made from? What region were they made in? What was the yield of that year? All these things come into play and change the flavor profile of what's going on.
Well, you have the local ingredients grown in the local area, so just that alone creates its own flavor profile, and then it's treated in a specific way because of that area's cultural traditions. Just every step of the way is done very specifically to that region.
Right.
It's hard to replicate that if you don't have the original materials. And even if you have the original materials, if you don't do it in the original style to a T, it's still not going to be the same.
Yeah. And some people get really irritated by that. I particularly, and I think Brian
awesome.
feels the same. We do not. And that's because if you dilute a concept too far,
it's not that thing
then
anymore.
it's just no good anymore.
Yeah. That's why we don't say we're making a specific style of wine now.
Right.
We say we're making
and
red
so
wine.
there's lots of thought and lots of different aspects that are coming in to create this wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just allow that to be completely discredited, then you don't know what you're getting. You're not going to be able to trust that word anymore because it's going to be too diluted.
This comes back to something that we talk about frequently, and I try not to get too caught up in it, but it's the whole naming convention. Is this mead? Is this metheglin? Is this melomel? Is this wine? Is it this wine? Here's the problem with that. You can, if you want to, call everything you make Steve. However, after a while,
nobody's going to know what you're talking about.
Nobody's going to know what you mean, and nobody's going to know what it is.
They're just going to, it was a Steve, that means so-and-so made it, but I don't know what it is.
Right, and that doesn't mean anything. And if you made an actual mead, but you're calling it something other than mead, that, again, dilutes the name mead and can confuse people because they won't know what they're getting. That's why we try to be accurate with the name, but not like anal about it. Like I don't want to be pedantic about names, but to a point, you want to be semi-accurate. If you want to call it such and such, what you want to call it Steve, a melomel mead made with blueberries, I'm cool with that.
Right.
Because you're still telling people what it is.
And that
it's a little off topic, but it kind of is important, and it does actually work this way because if...
Well, it does come into play when people ask us, can you make a sherry?
We can make something that's kind of like a sherry, although we actually can't because we don't distill.
Right. Can you make a champagne? We did...
We did a poor man's champagne.
A poor man's champagne, which isn't a champagne.
No, it's just sparkling wine.
But it was a sparkling white wine in the...
Almost, sort of, kind of in the style of champagne.
Giving props or recognition.
Because we actually didn't use the method that they use.
Right,
for the,
right.
Yeah, we didn't do any of that. So is it champagne? No, not even close.
So these are all problems as to why the home brewer cannot make varietals.
Well, they can. It's just very hard to do.
It's going to be very narrow, and it's going to be very...
Because I know people that do it.
Sure.
We have a couple of VIPs that actually do their best to replicate.
Absolutely. So. And I applaud their efforts. And lots of them find the varietal grape, or they find the varietal grape concentrate.
Or they live in California, right, Barry?
California. Speaking of California, if you love wine and you go to your local wine store where they sell all that glorious stuff, you may notice that lots of the California wines are put in what they call the blend section. And that is part of this conversation. They can't call their red wine or Merlot unless they're growing their own Merlot grapes, but they can't any wine that is a regional wine, they can't call it that, even if they're using everything else.
But then how is it a blend?
So that is just the generic term that the California wines have been labeled under. And Personally, I feel like that's a disservice because
Yeah, that's crappy.
lots of people attribute blends to being subpar.
Yeah.
Which is complete BS, and that's a whole other topic that we're not going to get into.
Because everything is a blend, technically.
Yes. So I haven't done further research on the California scene because I know it is growing and it is getting huge, and there are so many great wines coming out of the California vineyards that are new and wonderful and creating their own flavor
And a lot
profile.
of the time, you can buy those grapes or those concentrates.
And so
We just have the transportation problem.
I don't know if they're coming up with their own varietal names, but if they aren't, I think they should be.
I think they have in a couple of cases.
Because
California wines are starting to get recognized a lot
Right.
higher in the field.
So I think, coming up with a name rather than just being a blend would be great. And I think lots of the vineyards, and I know this is a thing that doesn't happen in the winemaking community, the commercial winemaking community at large, is they all want to be internal. They don't want to share. But I think if they got together and said, okay, we all grow these type of grapes in this state.
Oh, there's a large winemaking community, among winemakers.
Let's create our own categorization.
Oh, okay, make their own.
So this is the
There's probably some kind of law about that.
Calification wine.
Californication?
Californication.
Can I say?
I don't know. And like I said, I haven't researched that to see if they've already done it. I'm hopeful that they
I think
have.
there's a couple of varieties that they did do that.
But I do know when we go to the Total Wine and More, all the highly rated California wines are in the blend section, and that just kind of makes me sad because I know
It could
lots
also
of
just be
people
Total Wine and More.
that don't understand immediately say that that's an inferior product, and that's not the case at all. They're coming up with some great flavor profiles, and I applaud their efforts.
So you know what we haven't done yet?
We haven't scored this wine.
Pretty sure we did when it was a year old. I'm pretty sure we did when it was new. Pretty sure we need to do it again now. We've gone back to ye olde system where we just give a 1 through 10. And basically, here's how it works. 1 through about 4, probably wouldn't drink it, might even dump it down the drain. 4.5 to about 7-ish or so is pretty decent. I'd drink it. I wouldn't turn down a second glass if somebody was pouring it. Above that, it's fantastic. All the way up to like 10 and into the illustrious 11, where it's just absolutely incredibly amazing. It cannot be improved. There's just nothing better than that. I'm getting pickier with my numbers.
I am too, and there's lots of things that I love about this wine. I love the color. That super deep red, but when you get to the bottom of your glass, you're like, there's nothing in there. It's as clear as can be.
Oh, yeah, it's totally
just
clear.
so dark.
More on the scoring, though, I wasn't actually done.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Somebody actually suggested this. They said, why don't you start with 10 and work backwards and explain why you're taking points off? I like that idea. I used to do that when I was a photography judge for the Professional Photographers of America. I would start at 10 and come up with reasons why it wasn't a 10, rather than starting at like 5 and finding reasons why it could be a 10. So I like that concept. So with that in mind, do you have a number?
I do, but I don't have good reasons of my negation to from 10.
It is okay. You can go with feeling. You can go with your own personal bias. It doesn't matter. This is whose line is it anyway? You know, the scores don't matter and the points are made up. So it doesn't. Or the scores are made up and the points don't matter. That's what it is. Either way, it doesn't. It's not that crucial because the thing you got to remember is taste can vary from day to day and hour to hour. Like what you ate before can affect it. Your mood can affect it. So
did you brush your teeth just before filming and then go, oops?
Yeah. If you give something a 5.5 one day, you might give it a 6.5 the next day. It's not really that crucial, but just kind of get the idea of what realm it lives in is the gist.
I have a realm.
You brushed your teeth just before we started filming.
I brushed my teeth just before filming.
I always tell you, don't do that.
I know you do. And as I was doing it, I'm like, oh, there's Brian's voice saying not to do this.
Yeah, because it will ruin the flavor of anything. But anyway, I think I'm ready. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
1, 2, 3,
8.
9. Wow. So yeah, the toothbrushing will really ruin this wine.
So, and this is why I prefaced it with I really don't have a reason as to why I went that low, which an 8 is not low, ladies and gentlemen.
No, that's a great score.
You did hear Brian's preface to the whole scoring thing.
Higher than 7. That's a really good
And I think
number,
it's just because I'm getting stuck on that section of flatness.
Okay. That's fair.
So if I keep drinking, the front is great, the back is great. It's just that little midsection where it's just kind of and static might be the better word than flat because
because it's too many receptors all at once.
I'm just like,
if I went off my first sip, my actual first sip, I would have given this closer to a 10. But as I drank more of it, I noticed the slightly phenolic 3/4 palate, a little bit. It's dry. I think a little bit of sweetness might have actually helped this. Now, I'm saying that now, but I think a little sweetness might have helped. I also think it might be slightly too tannic at this point or too acidic. One of those two is kind of bothering me a little bit. So I took off a half point for each of those things.
Yeah, I'm thinking that based on the notes that I read about how a Merlot should be, we might be
over-oaked and over-acidified.
Too tannic for a traditional Merlot.
And that's fine, because this was the first time we ever tried to make one, and we just kind of made up a recipe and went with it, and it worked, and it came out really great. Don't get me wrong. This is an 8.5 total score. That's a fantastic wine. Fantastic wine. I mean, absolutely amazing. I would drink this. We're probably going to drink the rest of this with dinner tonight. Yeah. Because it's just that kind of good.
We're having...
spaghetti meatballs.
See, that was what I was going to say. If I was pairing this with...
I might even...
with a tomato sauce or...
Is this the only bottle we have?
Yeah.
Oh, because that would be great in this sauce.
Yeah, no. This is, we're going to drink this.
All right, fine.
A tomato sauce, like a really rare steak or so many different things. I think this would be fantastic and throw the numbers out the window. I don't care. The bottle would be gone, the food would be gone, and I would be happy.
Yep. And that's the thing with the scoring system. It's more or less like a gut instinct. It's not really like a scientifically practiced thing. We started getting away from that kind of score because a couple people had said, oh, well, I don't want to make that brew because they only gave that a 7, where this one was a 7.5. And I went, if that's preventing you from making something, we are doing this wrong.
Right. And we're providing a disservice, which made us feel bad. But...
and I've come to realize we can only control so much. If somebody takes our number that seriously, all we can say is, please don't.
The basic gist that you should take away is not the numbers. Is, did we enjoy this?
Yeah.
Do we feel like this is something worth replicating? In this particular instance, I said, absolutely.
Like I say, what realm does it live in? Is it in the probably won't drink it and would dump it, we'll drink it and have 2 maybe, or this is awesome? Where does it fall in the grand scheme of things?
This is
definitely in the this is awesome category.
Yeah.
That's where I said the numbers when I explained the numbers. This is in the this is awesome category.
I'm resisting pouring me another glass.
Yeah, because we're gonna drink this with dinner.
We're gonna drink it with dinner. It's gonna be so good with dinner. Oh my gosh.
So if anybody has any more questions on varietals of grapes, we're gonna do the best we can. It might take us a little bit of time to get back to you because we may have to do the research on it, because that's not something that we really make on the channel.
Right.
So be careful what you ask. We might not be able to answer.
Also, if you want to know if there's a concentrate available for you, you can go to Amazon and type in whatever varietal you're trying to find.
We found quite a few, actually.
And you will find if they're available. You also find how expensive they are.
That's why we don't do a lot of them, too. They tend to be pretty pricey. I want to say the concentrate to make this one was about $65, and I think it was enough to make 1.5 gallons or 2 gallons.
Yeah.
So they get kind of expensive.
Yeah. So hopefully that cleared up some of the reasons why recreating a particular varietal in the homebrew genre is difficult or darn right impossible.
And as always, guys, thanks so much for watching and have a great day.
Bye-bye.